the dawn of the ages, you pulled land from the sea. With your word you invented all we know, all we see. Creek and desert and forest, red and grey kangaroo. You were in this place, but we never knew.
So we give thanks and acknowledge the elders of our First Peoples, the way they have cared for and respected the land. They remind us of our connection to the land, to the creation in which we walk and live and find sustenance. Their connection and that of their descendants teaches us to listen and be responsible. This week is NAIDOC Week, reminding us as Australians of our debt to our First Nations peoples and to the call to reconciliation. As Uniting Church peoples, we commit to this journey as an expression of the good news of healing and life in Jesus Christ. So as you pause and worship today, what is it you see? Where is God? What do you see? Do you see God in the land, in the creation on which you stand? Do you see God in the smiles and faces of those you meet, those excited to see you? Where is God? What do you see? Do you see God in the healing of sickness and of the community? Do you see God in the journey towards reconciliation in broken relationships? Do you see God in the comfort in grief? But where is God's presence? What about when we are the subject of criticism and contempt of others? What about when we are given a hard time? Where is God's presence? Do you see God in being meek, in your grief, in your poverty, and in your persecution?
I lift up my eyes to you who sit enthroned in heaven. As the eyes of slaves look to the hand of their master, as the eyes of a female slave look to the hand of her mistress, so our eyes look to the Lord our God till he shows us his mercy. Have mercy on us, Lord, have mercy on us, for we have endured no end of contempt. We have endured no end of ridicule from the arrogant, of contempt from the proud. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
God known and unknown, in whom we live and move, uncontained, unrestrained by old and new. God known and unknown, breaking any image we portray, stirring us always to change. Beyond all models, words and imagery, you fascinating mystery. God named and unnamed, of which we speak and hush, cleaned, unbound, stirring us always to change. Beyond all models, words and imagery, you fascinating mystery. Oh, God sought and unsought, inhabiting our blood, enfolding, unfolding a springtime bud. God sought and unsought, breaking any image we portray, stirring us always to change. Beyond all models, words and imagery, you fascinating mystery. God, here and absent, with whom we glee and moan, sought, unsought, named, unnamed, and known, unknown. God, here and absent, breaking any image we portray, stirring us always to change. Beyond all models, words and imagery, you fascinating mystery.
God of hope, love and grace, help us to see you as you see us. Help us to see you when all seems for naught. Help us to see you when struggles overwhelm. And as we rejoice in the blessings given, may we truly worship you as life giver and sustainer. Amen.
Hello friends, I have a story to share with you. Now I've taken this story from the book of Matthew, but I'm not going to tell it how it appears in the book of Matthew. I'm going to tell it how I tell it. I'm going to share it how I'm going to share it with you right now. The merchant gathered the 3 most trusted servants of the household together to make an announcement. "I'm going on a very long trip," the merchant said, "and while I'm away, I'm entrusting the 3 of you with all of my talents." Now, a talent is not just a skill or an attribute that somebody has. It's an amount of money, the same amount of money that someone can earn in 20 days. So it's quite a tidy sum. And the merchant had a lot of talents. So they were gathered all together and divided into 3 shares. And each of the 3 servants got 1 share each. Once the servants had their portion of the merchant's talents, the merchant left. The first servant thought for a little bit about what to do with all the talents. And then he went to the grocer's. And he bought eggs and flour and milk and butter and sugar and vanilla and cocoa and sprinkles and spices and jam and fruit and cooked up a store. And then he wrapped up all the cakes and slices, pies and pastries and sold them at the market. And then the next week, he took the money that he'd earned and did it all over again. But this time he was able to try new techniques and learn new recipes. And then the next week, he was able to do it all over again. And then the next week he's able to do it all over again, and again, and again, and again, and again. The second servant thought about what she should do with all the talents. And then she went to the hardware store. And she got screws and nails, hammers and screwdrivers, liquid nails, WD-40, potting mix, trowels, spades, ladders, tape measure, and put them all in her car. And then she drove around the town telling everyone she saw that if there was building or gardening, maintaining or fixing, she was your go-to person. And at the end of the week, she'd earned a little bit of money. And the next week she used that money to buy some new tools and learn some new skills, and then did it all over again. And then the next week she did all of it all over again. And all over again. And again and again and again and again and again. The third servant thought about what they should do with all the talents. And then they went to the shed. And they carefully wrapped up all the talents they had received in a box and tied it up tight and put it in a safe, dry corner of the shed. And they left it alone. And went about the rest of their life doing ordinary things. And then the next week, they did it all over again. And then the next week, they did it all over again, and all over again, and again, and again, and again, and again. A year and a day pass by. All the three servants do three very different things. And then the merchant returns from the long trip, gathers the three servants together and says, "So, what have you done with the talents while I was away?" "Well," says the first servant, "I cooked and I baked. And once I had cooked and I baked, I was able to learn new techniques and try new recipes, and in a short period of time, I doubled the talents you gave me." "How wonderful!" said the merchant. "I'm so proud of what you've done." "Well," said the second servant, "I maintained and gardened, and I fixed and I built, and after a while I was able to learn new skills and buy new tools, and after some time I doubled the talents you gave me." "How fantastic!" said the merchant. "I'm so glad of what you've achieved." "Well," said the third servant, "I put the talents safely in a box in a dry, safe corner of my shed and left them alone for the whole year and a day, and now I've dusted them off and opened them up, and they're exactly as you left them." "How unfortunate," said the merchant. "You didn't do anything. You didn't try something new. You didn't give it to your two friends to help with their endeavours. You didn't give to those in need. You didn't put it in the bank where it would have earned some interest. You didn't try something and totally fail. You left it in a box, in your shed, gathering dust. If I wanted my talents to remain exactly as they are, I would have kept them to myself. But I didn't, and I don't, and I gave them to you." It's a strange sort of ending, isn't it? The story doesn't really end, it just stops, waiting for you to wonder and think about why the merchant might have given the talents to the servants in the first place, or why the three servants did three very different things, or what I might have done if I had received talents from the merchant. And who is the merchant? And I'm going to leave you to wonder and think. I'll see you in the soup.
This week is a very busy week in the wider community. Today, when this video is being recorded, is Remembrance Day, and so a wider community has paused to remember those who have made sacrifices before us. But it's also NAIDOC week as well, and that reminds us of those who have gone before us in a different way, but also those who take a hold of responsibility for our community and move us forward. Meg, you were going to say something more about NAIDOC week.
Yes, Peter, as I went for my walk this morning, I was thinking about Linda's reflection and how in both the Old Testament and the Matthew parable, the notion of taking risk came out. Deborah took a huge risk in directing Barak, if you like, and talking about leading her people and his as the warrior. And the servants of the master who were given certain talents and how they used them differently, but two took risks and one just took the safe road and buried the treasure, the money. And I was thinking, how does this apply to us in NAIDOC week? And it occurred to me that we need to be willing to take the risk in hearing the stories of our history, of our dispossession of the Indigenous people and their land, of the really very negative things that were done, not by me, not by my parents' generation, although that did occur and still does. But are we willing to take the risk and hear that truth? Or are we just going to sit and pretend it never happened? And in doing so, we will never have reconciliation. And I know it's something I feel really strongly about, obviously, but I think it's important for our future as a nation.
To take that risk is really significant. Linda, did you want to take that idea up a bit more, and particularly as it's your reflection that we're responding to?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my reflection about that was, it's sort of the easy road to not take the risk and to be imploding and, worrying about all your own stuff without looking out. And I think probably through these difficult times, it's a place of safety, sort of to implode a bit and stay safe indoors and that, but that's not where we're called to be really, and it's in the going out and in the working with the community and taking those risks. Often you're with people who are in risky situations, and you go out and you put yourself in that place of being with them and therefore put yourself at risk. But that's the God stuff, isn't it? It's hard, but it's good. And that's where our growth and our connectedness with people and God is really potent.
So we're not really, though, talking about a risk against like COVID, so to speak. That's a different ballgame, and we don't want to be misunderstood that way. It may mean taking the risk, even when we're in a COVID restricted environment, and there are restrictions still upon us, and there's still things we've got to do to look after that. But it's what we're talking about is being able to step out in new ways. And actually, the COVID environment has challenged us to do things in new ways. And in doing so, it has actually opened up opportunities we never thought possible. While many might think of me as someone who doesn't mind playing with computers and things like that, a lot of the stuff we're doing at the moment I've never done before until this COVID time. And so we had to take a risk and put ourselves on the line and in order to share those things with one another. So this week being NAIDOC week, reminding ourselves of the stories of our ancient heritage, with both Deborah and Matthew's stories and the other stories of the lectionary this week. And the stories surrounding Remembrance Day and those things, they remind us that people did take risks, and in doing so, they achieved, they stepped forward, they built something. If we just close up and try and bury, we want to keep the church and our community of faith as it used to be, people die. And it's not what God's wanting for us. It's one of the things that struck me about the Matthew reading. In the past, I've often associated, when we hear the word talents and gifts, like the story of Paul, where Paul talks about us each being gifts of the Spirit. But it struck me that the gift that's been spoken of, the talent that's been given here, is actually the reign of God. That it's speaking of that the reign of God is like this, that the people of God's community, is probably a better way of putting it, are actually taking seriously what does it mean to be God's community and building that community in order to be a blessing, a bit like the blessing of the Beatitudes from a few weeks ago. We're called to put our light on a hill, not under a bushel. And Linda, in your reflection, you talked about Deborah of doing something like that. Would you like to go into?
Yeah, I had to talk about Deborah. She only comes around once every 3 years, so got to make the most of talking about Deborah. And what an amazing inspiration she is. And, how could you even name all the risks that she is taking in following God and going against the cultural norm of the male prophets, and and talked about her sitting under the palm, which became known as the Palm of Deborah, which was in the marketplace and a travel through place, so people could easily access her and her gifting of knowledge and wisdom from God. It's just beautiful. It is hard sometimes as a woman to go into areas that are particularly masculine and have traditionally been for a long time. And I've certainly experienced it in my earlier days as a minister.
Yep.
It wasn't easy at times. Can't pretend that it was. But there's that sense of call that you follow, and you trust in God, and people grow and change too along the pathway, and I grew and changed too. And so, got a particular spot for Deborah.
Yes, and the bit that you mentioned in your reflection, Linda, about risk-taking and being countercultural as the community of God, and where our wider society has changed so much in our lifetimes from our parents' generation when we were growing up to now, we are really called to be risk-takers and countercultural in our own community. And that's hard. It's not easy to do.
No, and it's hard when church and being Christian often has a negative connotation for many people these days.
Yeah.
So we used to be the majority, but now we're the minority. Yeah. But I think, they said, I've got this beautiful quote here from Michelangelo, the greater danger for most of us lies not in setting our aim too high and falling short, but in setting our aim too low and achieving our mark. Deborah could have easily have said, well, this is too hard, I'll stay at home and become a wife and a childbearer, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but her gifting was for a different path, and or maybe we don't know if she had children, or who knows, don't know. But the point is that her main ministry took risk, and she went for that higher calling rather than settling to something that was lower than what her potential could be in God.
And we're into quotes today. A quote that I read this morning earlier was that the biggest risk of all is not to risk anything, and that not risking, you don't commit yourself deeply to something in particular. It might be to invest really deeply into a community or a project or something, but it takes you out of your comfort zone because of the gifts and skills and graces that God has given us.
There's so much in that for us to follow through and to explore. And in the whole, it's all within the context of how is God working in and with us. And it's in the confidence that knowing that as we take a hold of what God has blessed us with, that we can be a blessing and build others and make a difference in a positive way. So, and it doesn't matter, the restrictions we've had around us doesn't stop us from being a blessing. And many people have found new ways to do that. So the invitation, which we've talked a bit about over the last few weeks as well, even going back to a couple of weeks ago with regard to All Saints Day, is to step forward, keep stepping forward in faith, knowing the love of God is stirring within us and using that in a way which can bless and build others. Wherever people grow up without the example and encouragement of loving people who have respect for themselves and others, may your saving love abound. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Wherever people live with a bitterness of spirit which poisons and distresses all those who live around them, may your saving love abound. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Wherever some live greedily, without gratitude or generosity, always keeping a ruthless eye on the happiness and possessions of others, may your saving love abound. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Wherever men resort to violence, rape, abuse, terrorism and warfare, spreading immense misery and accelerating hatreds, may your saving love abound. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Wherever women suffer disease, abuse, injustice, exploitation, slavery or forced prostitution, and have no faith or hope to succour them, may your saving love abound. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Wherever communities of mixed races are torn by rumours, old resentments and new patterns of discrimination, may your saving love abound. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Wherever people sit with the dying, make funeral arrangements, or spend sleepless nights grieving and fearing, may your saving love abound. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Holy friend, you cherish every being on this planet. Please teach us, slow learners that we are, how to better live together, organise communities, end injustice, and eradicate all those evils that defile the sacred divine image that resides in us all. Through Jesus, our older brother and our Saviour. Amen. When we see God, we cannot stay the same. When we see God working, we are called to participate in God's ministry. And when we see God transforming, we are invited to join with God in God's mission. Open your eyes and see. See God and be changed. Join with God in ministry and mission to bring life and hope. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord. Amen.
We live on Kangaroo land. And the church lives on Wurundjeri. They are all part of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respects to the elders, past, present and emerging. We're so grateful to live here.
Peace and joy. Send us out into your world, free to be, to live and to love, and may all we do and say for you bring freedom for all. May our lives speak of your love. May